And we're live. Welcome to the Savage Bloggers Network Hangouts on Air. I'm Kristian Serrano.
And I'm Ron Blessing.
And tonight we have with us co-creators of Melior Via's Thin Blue Line, Jason Marker.
Hey, guys.
And John Dunn.
Hi, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on the show, and thanks for reaching out, by the way. We really appreciate you having us here, or joining us here, I should say. We've been talking about Thin Blue Line on the podcast for a while, for a number of weeks, so this is really exciting for both of us.
I have to ask, how bad are we butchering the name of your company?
You're getting it right. It's Latin. Melior Via means better way. It came about from the way we had been working with another company at the time, my former partner and I, and kind of spun that off.
And on a related note, is it Thin Blue Line or The Thin Blue Line?
It is, the full title is The Thin Blue Line, a Detroit police story.
Ah, okay.
So, shorthand is Thin Blue Line.
Excellent, excellent.
I'm so lazy. I've been calling it TBL, so there you go.
That's the name of our Dropbox folder, actually.
Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent.
That's efficiency right there.
Excellent. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
We didn't have, for once, we had no technical difficulties, so I would like to thank Clint Black for not being here.
Oh.
And did I say that out loud?
Damn, son.
I'm just kidding.
Cold in here.
I love you, Clint. I do. I love Jody more, but I love you. So we had a lot of time to kind of get to know you guys while we were preparing for this, but the audience has not gotten to know you. So I was kind of hoping you can tell us about yourselves and your history with the RPGs.
John?
Sure. So I started gaming 40-odd years ago. I'm 35. And started with D&D, played everything all through grade school and into high school and college. Started freelancing. Well, when I was in college, I did a lot of writing for RPGA adventures. Pretty much everything that wasn't D&D I wrote for. And then many years later, around 2000, 2005, I started working with FanPro and then Catalyst to coordinate the Shadowrun missions campaign. And after doing that for a little while, worked my way in as a freelancer, and then freelanced with them. Eventually moved over to Fantasy Flight, working on 40K, Star Wars Edge of the Empire, and then from there started up Melior Via, did the Hope Prep setting for Icons and Mutants and Masterminds, and then worked on a few other things for other companies, but eventually Melior Via did Accursed in cooperation with Ross Watson and Jason Marker as a Kickstarter in 2013 for Savage Worlds. And then as we've progressed through that, we decided we wanted to go in a little bit different direction with another setting for Melior Via, and that's when Jason brought Thin Blue Line to me.
Awesome.
Excellent. Excellent.
It's a good segue to you, Jason.
That's a great segue. Thanks, man. A good
No
setup.
problem.
That's a good setup. My name's Jason. I'm a writer from here in Detroit. I've been, like John, I've been playing role-playing games forever. I've been playing for 30-some years. And my first was Redbox D&D. And I was introduced to Redbox D&D by my friend Brian Hamlin, and who I haven't seen in 20-some years. So if you're out there, thanks, man. I owe everything to you. And, all through high school, a lot of D&D, a lot of Rifts. I got into Rifts in, 90 when it came out. The original Robotech RPG. Played a lot of World of Darkness, Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, all the sort of the big name 90s, late 80s, early 90s games I was into. The original Deadlands and Hell on Earth, which are both settings I love. And then in '99, I wrote a short piece of fiction as part of a creative writing class. I was at a community college in St. Louis, and my final for that class was write a piece of short fiction and send it in for publication. Send it in to see if it gets published. And it didn't have to get published. I just had to send it in. And I wrote this little short 3-page piece of short fiction based on a Ramon Perez illustration out of one of the Rifts books, and sent it to the Rifter, Palladium's quarterly magazine. And sure as hell, it got picked up, and I got published in Rifter 8, which was their Halloween issue, because it was a horror story. From there, I freelanced for Palladium all through the 2000s. While I worked other jobs, I'm trained as a chef, and all through the 2000s, I was working as an advertising photographer, so I was taking pictures of cars. And then that business changed, and my photo business went under because the business changed, and I got picked up at Palladium for full time. So I was on staff there, and I brought helped bring the new Robotech RPG back to market, which I'm still super proud of. I think the new Robotech RPG was really awesome, and I'm a huge Robotech fan anyway. So, and then I was at Palladium for 2 years, and then I went freelance again. I got picked up by Ross at Ross Watson when he was at Fantasy Flight because on the strength of my Robotech work. And I worked on all the 40K lines. I've worked on all the Star Wars lines so far. Did Accursed with John. I've done some Shadowrun 4 stuff. I've done some stuff for Malifaux through the Breach. A couple other smaller things. And then I already said Accursed, right?
Yes.
Okay. Accursed. and now I'm doing Thin Blue Line. So.
Excellent. So you've done a couple things then.
Yeah.
Here and there.
A little bit.
So I'm going to ask real quick, just kind of go off on a tangent. Are you excited about the Savage Worlds Rifts that's coming out?
I haven't played Rifts or really thought about Rifts in a long time. It's like way off my radar.
Right.
So it's interesting, but I'm not super stoked about it because I'm sort of in another place right now with my gaming.
I hear you. Yeah, it's understandable. All right, cool.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
It was nice of John to take a chance on you then with your background. That was
right. Well, I've known. I forget what our first 40K assignment was together, but
it was Battlefleet Coronis for
was it really?
Yeah.
God, what a great book that is.
We're talking like 2009.
Yeah, that was 2009 or 2010.
Yeah.
No, it was 2010 because
Okay.
That was my second or third assignment for fantasy.
Is that where your RPG careers sort of intersected? Was it at that point?
Yeah.
Surprisingly, yeah. We were in the same place at the same time before that, but had never worked together.
A lot of times, yeah. Or nor had we met.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah, it was just kind of one of those things.
So how did the two of you pair up for a Thin Blue Line?
John?
Lots of booze.
Yeah, lots of drinking.
That works. That's enough of an answer, actually. I think it's perfect.
No, I've been kicking around Thin Blue Line for a long time, and I've been running it for like 10 or 12 years now. And I had talked on and off about doing it, and John had mentioned, I don't know, maybe a year ago, he's like, "Oh, we should totally do something else. Now that Accursed is doing real well. Accursed was awesome. We should do something else." I'm like, yeah. And I'm hard to get motivated sometimes, and people need to light a fire under me sometimes. So a combination of John and my wife, like at one point my wife just stormed in my office. She's like, "Look, what is going on with Thin Blue Line? What are you doing with it?" And I'm like, "Well, I'll give John a call. Maybe John will want to do it." And John's like, "Yes, let's make some art." So
yeah, it was pretty much.
Wow.
I need a list of how you want the book organized and a chapter spec before I can start, actually moving this forward towards publication.
Right. Yeah. And it sort of came at a time when I was I go through these cycles, with writing and with my career where it's like I just want to dig ditches. If I never write another word again, it'll be too soon, and I'm done with this. Throwing stuff around, and
I have that conversation at work every day.
Right.
I do that with podcasting.
It's between digging ditches and going into carpentry. I'm
right.
Not sure which.
Yeah.
Well,
It's actually it's like at the end of every assignment I've ever done, like 2 or 3 days before the deadline. It's like, I hate writing. I hate this assignment. I hate this IP. I hate everything about this. I'm just gonna be a ditch digger because I never want to write again. I'm terrible at this. Everything sucks and is ruined forever.
Yeah.
And I was at a point like that just in my career, and John was like, "Hey, let's make this game," and my wife was like, "Get off your behind and make this game," and I'm like, well, I should make this game to prove to myself that I can do it. So
that's a good woman
awesome.
right there.
That is a very good
my wife is a hell of a woman, guys.
I hear you. I understand. That's why I'm recognizing it. Very cool.
That's right.
So something you told us earlier. I want to get some reaction from our viewers. You had an original game system that you ran the Thin Blue Line campaign in.
Yeah, Thin Blue Line. I originally developed it when I was still when I was still freelancing for Palladium, still heavily into Palladium games and everything, and primarily playing Palladium stuff. I ran Thin Blue Line as a Beyond the Supernatural game.
Wow.
Because that's Palladium's modern horror setting, and
creepy.
It's
from
good.
settings
It's a good
go,
setting.
it's a killer setting.
Yeah.
That's the one that was originally called Hellspawn, right? And then
No. You're thinking Nightbane.
Okay, Nightbane,
Nightbane, which is another
Nightspawn. Yeah, that's what it was.
which is another really rad setting that I actually crossed over with Beyond the Supernatural when I was doing my Thin Blue Line stuff.
There you go.
Because there's a lot of in Nightbane there's a lot of body horror, and I love body horror. I like that kind of Cronenberg, The Fly body horror kind of stuff. Right. And there's a lot of that in Nightbane, so I moved that. I sort of crossed that into Beyond the Supernatural when I was putting Thin Blue Line together originally, and it was just a thing that I was running at conventions and at home for my friends. It was never really a campaign. It was never going to be like a book or a source book or anything. It was just hey, let's do something, because I've lived in Detroit for 12 or 13 years now, and it was just one of those things. Like, man, this town is weird. Let's do a rad setting. Let's play some rad games in Detroit. So that's pretty much how it came about.
And
I like it.
You were talking about the pitch process before. One of the big things we did, about 3 months ago, after we were already starting down the path pretty well. I guess it was more than 3 months now.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a while.
I went up to Detroit and hung out for a day with Jason, and we did just a really solid tour of the city where he, showed me a lot of the things. I'm from Cleveland. I've been to Detroit before, but I hadn't experienced the way that his private tour turns it into, because he showed me a lot of the buildings, gave me a lot of history of it, and pointed out things and said, okay, here's where this ghost story happened, here's where this haunting happened, here's the origin of this curse. And it was really just amazingly enlightening to see how much of that was going on, and then also to see how the different neighborhoods of the city have changed over the years. I mean, everybody thinks RoboCop and urban blight when they think Detroit, and there are elements of that, but there are also a lot of places where you see people, hanging on, some by their fingertips, some doing really well, and the contrast between that is just really something to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the city is huge. You guys might not know this. The city is 142 square miles. That's just the city. That's not the metro area. The metro area is way bigger. So the talking point I always like to use is you can fit Manhattan, San Francisco, and Chicago, just the cities, within Detroit and still have room to move around.
Wow.
Yes.
At its height, there were 2.5 million people that lived in the city of Detroit. There are now fewer than 700,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
We got that poster map. It's one of the Kickstarter rewards. When I was working on that, I was assembling imagery to send to the graphic artists guys to make some changes on it. And it really struck home just how huge Detroit was, because I'm putting these photos together, and I look at the folder where I've got all the photos, and I'm like, oh shit, it's 250 gigs.
Wow.
It's a big town.
Yeah.
I was actually tempted because I actually added the $5 for the poster map, and then I was thinking, oh man, I could pull up Google Maps and do annotations with markers and regions and all this kind of stuff and share that out. And I was already thinking ahead of how I'm gonna use that map.
Well, there are a few changes. There are a few different things on the poster map that are different from the Google map, because Detroit, as it is in the Thin Blue Line, is Detroit.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So.
Cool. So if you were to define Thin Blue Line, it's obviously got the police sort of component to it, which we'll get into. But there's that supernatural. You've used the word paranormal. For the sake of the conversation, let's define exactly what you mean by these by those elements.
Okay.
Maybe some examples.
All right. Well, let me start with this. So my pitch for the Thin Blue Line has always been it's X-Files meets Hill Street Blues.
Right.
And I know that dates me as a gamer of a certain age, but it's
not just a gamer.
I'm there with you, man. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The paranormal elements within the game. Okay, so it's not like a straight up urban fantasy game. So that there's not werewolves, and there's not a huge vampire conspiracy, and there's not zombies in the sewers, and there's not a lot of that.
Glitter.
Pardon?
No glitter.
No, no.
Shiny vampires.
No, there is glitter, but it has nothing to do with vampires. That's something completely different. So the paranormal in the game is it's just an extension of nature, essentially. It's a natural force, and so a lot of the spirits that you get are nature spirits, and they're related to different aspects of nature or different aspects of the city that's built here. So you see, so like one of the monsters we have in the setting is a creature called the Creekside Shambler.
Right.
And Creekside's a neighborhood way on the southeast side, and the Shambler is a water spirit that it physically manifests, so it sort of looks like Swamp Thing, right? So it's just like this mass of weeds and garbage and stuff, and it's when Shamblers manifest, they're always angry because the water's dirty, and that's
Wow.
and so they'll come up out of the water and they'll grab a swimmer, or they'll grab a guy out of a canoe, drag him underwater and drown him.
Neat.
So
So investigating those incidents is where the setting sort of falls, right?
right, yeah. So and then there's things like that, but there's also like one of the games I've run in this, and one of the adventures, one of the cases is there's a naiad in a building, in the water system of a building that's being rehabbed, and it's killing construction workers.
Oh wow.
Because it had been living in the flooded basement for 30 years,
Right.
and when they started, because every basement in the city's got water in it unless it's pumped out, and that's just a fact of life living in Detroit, especially downtown because it's so close to the river. And so this naiad had lived in the basement for 30 years and had come up the river and into the water system, got into this basement and couldn't get out, and then the construction workers drained it, and its home was gone. And so it was living in the pipes, and it was manifesting and killing construction workers. And so, the Corktown officers have to go up there and figure out what's going on and deal with this, right? And so Corktown's mission is contain and eliminate, right? They need to keep all this happens in all this paranormal stuff, these incursions, I call them paranormal incursions. They all happen out in front of everybody, where people can see. But 90% of people can't handle seeing it, and their brains short circuit when they see a ghost or a shambler or a salt person from the salt mines or whatever, and they'll write it off as something else. Oh, it was a rabid animal, or it was a dog with mange, or it was a
Right.
swamp gas reflecting off a weather balloon and with Venus and thing, right? And so they always try to rationalize it away, but it's there, and the city is very weird and very haunted, and sort of the background for the setting is there's a massive upsurge in paranormal activity, and everything's boiling out. So the Corktown officers are working harder and harder and harder. Like I was joking the other day with someone, they're working 10 hours a week, or 10 days a week, 30 hours a day, triple overtime, trying to keep this under wraps, while their brains are unraveling because of their psychic powers and their constant exposure to the paranormal.
Neat.
So it's sort of this like 5 minutes to midnight thing where the whole lid's gonna blow off of everything, and it's like at the end of Ghostbusters where all the ghosts come out of the top of the firehouse.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be the totally beleaguered cops at Corktown are trying to keep a lid on it before everything just goes haywire.
So you just mentioned Ghostbusters. Are there aspects of like spectral or ghostly encounters as well, or is it all like natural?
No,
Okay, cool.
there are definitely spirits and ghosts in there. They're part of that. They're something else. They're not like a nature creature. Sometimes they're a recording. So, sometimes they're like a powerful emotion was spent there, and it recorded itself on the fabric of time.
Right.
And so like in Corktown, in the Corktown neighborhood, which is Detroit's Irish neighborhood, that's where the game is sort of set. At the intersection of Trumbull and Michigan Avenue, that's where Tiger Stadium was for about 100 years. And it's gone now, but the field is still there. People still play baseball on it. People play like historic baseball, and they have picnics and stuff there. One of the throwaway things I mentioned in the book was they have a problem with the ghost of Ty Cobb appearing and running the bases.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because Ty Cobb played for the Tigers for the longest time, and he's not a nature spirit, and you might be able to talk to that ghost, but it doesn't know it's a ghost, and it's probably just a recording.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it's one of those things. It's like, you get a Corktown officer gets a call. We have an incursion. We have a possible manifestation at such and such an address. Send a car out there. And so the cop has to go out there, and they're like, all right, what is this? And there are parapsychologists that are on staff at the precinct, and they study all the paranormal stuff, and they've got all the records going back 100 years because the Corktown precinct is about 100 years old, and the report says this, this, and this, so it could be X, Y, and Z, but we don't know. So go in there and find out what it is. So this officer has to go in there into an empty house or into an abandoned factory or an empty field or just somebody's backyard and figure out what's back there. And if it could be just a pattern ghost, which is like Ty Cobb, just like running the bases, or it could be a golem or a shambler or salt people or dogmen or something horrible back there.
Or it could be some druggies that are really just strung out.
Exactly.
Right.
That's another thing, because they are still dealing with the regular mundane day-to-day crime that happens in the city. Right. So when a Corktown officer goes on shift, they get their briefing from the duty sergeant. They get their stuff on. They get in their car. They pull out onto Michigan Avenue, and they're on patrol for 8 or 10 hours, and they're dealing with all the regular stuff that police officers in Detroit deal with.
The mundane, quote unquote.
The mundane stuff. Right. But then they could get a call on the special frequencies with the special 10 codes, and it's like, we've got a manifestation in public. I need
10666 over in the.
Exactly. Yeah, you read the thing, right? Yeah.
And there's nothing to say that it can't be a combination of the two, right? Strung out druggies interacting with something.
Well, and that's where it gets into. So there is magic in the setting. So all the cops are psychics,
right?
Or they are mundane people that had run-ins with the paranormal,
right?
And their eyes have been opened and they can understand this now.
And there's a couple of arcane backgrounds associated with it too, right?
Right. Yeah. There's arcane background psychic, arcane background nullifier, which basically is immune to psychic powers and dampens psychic powers around it. But there is magic in the setting. But is this a family-friendly podcast?
Mostly.
Relatively speaking, yeah.
All right. Sorry, kids. In the setting, magic is for assholes.
Okay.
That was kind of a mantra.
All magic is ritual magic, and it requires a blood sacrifice.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So decent people don't use magic.
Yeah.
So you talk about like druggies, getting maybe some crackhead or some junkie gets a hold of an ancient book, an ancient tome, and this will make me rich or this will make me whatever, and they kill somebody, and it summons a horrible creature.
So that kind of touches on a question that Ron had. Ron, I think you were curious about mechanics regarding supernatural.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the mechanical things that you've done to bring this stuff to life in Savage Worlds?
Like what, the creatures or the psychic powers or
like
a specific.
Powers. Obviously, there's a pretty straightforward paradigm set forth as far as the way creatures work.
Right.
But I'm more interested in what you're doing with like arcane backgrounds and things like that.
So there's arcane background psychic, and the parapsychologists at Corktown have come up with roughly 5 kinds of psychics. Not all psychics fall into these 5 categories, but the 5 rough kinds of psychics are telepaths, which read thoughts, empaths, which read feelings, intuitives, which are mechanical psychics. That means they can manipulate machines and computers, and they can also manipulate knowledge. So one of our powers is autodidact, and it's kind of expensive. It's 3 power points to use, and when you fire up autodidact, you know everything about one specific subject.
Knowledge.
One specific subject for 1 hour.
Oh, nice.
So I ran a demo last night, and the guy that was playing my intuitive used autodidact so that he would know everything about ancient Egyptian death cults for 1 hour because he needed it, and he was fantastic, and that was his power. So those are intuitives. Then there are Vitruvian psychics, who their powers are more for boosting their own abilities, so that they can jump higher, run faster, shrug off bullets, jump 10 stories out of a building and not get hurt, see in the dark, hear things that normal people can't hear, and they can also heal.
I am so glad I backed this.
And then there are nullifiers, and nullifiers, like I said, nullifiers are the ones that they emanate this field of like an anti-psychic field. And so psychic powers cannot be used in their presence. Creatures flee from them, and they can't be affected by psychic powers. Which means, while they can't be possessed or whatever, they also can't be healed. And they also can't be buffed.
Ooh.
You know.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so nullifiers are powerful, but they, that's all they can do.
Yeah,
they can't get any benefits from their teammates, and their presence actively hinders their teammates. Thankfully, nullifiers are super rare. And then
yet I want to play one now.
Right. Yeah, they're super awesome. They're super awesome. And then so using psychic powers is really hard on you.
Yeah.
And so to reflect that, we came up with the Delirium and Reason Tracker. And it's a 5-point system, 5-rank system. And it starts at Perfect Reason, and it ends at Total Delirium. And Perfect Reason is like me and you and John and Kristian, right?
Well,
just regular guys, right? Well, none of us have psychic powers. And, we're just regular people, and if we see something crazy, that's a dog with mange. That's not a hellhound.
Right.
Right.
That's not the dog man. If you have psychic powers, or once you see something for real, once the scales have fallen from your eyes, then you go one step down on the Reason Tracker towards Delirium to Irregular.
Interesting.
And there are bonuses and penalties to different skills that you get as you go further along the track, because you become more and more detached from humankind. And at pure delirium, essentially your spirit detaches itself from your body and becomes a ghost.
Oh, wow.
So your body's still alive, but your soul or spirit or whatever you want to call it just takes off, because it's become a thing of pure paranormal, essence.
So at that point, is it essentially just like an empty shell, like your body?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Your body's still alive, but it's a vegetable.
Oh, wow.
It's in a vegetative state, and it'll never come back. You can't get back, and there's no way to get back to Perfect Reason, but you can stave off the madness by constant psychotherapy. There are therapists there are regular psychologists and parapsychologists working in the Corktown precinct, and the officers have to, if you're going to work at Corktown, you have to submit to therapy and group therapy and analysis.
And moving a step back toward Perfect Reason is an edge purchase.
Right.
In the game mechanics.
Yep.
That is really, really awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of it, some of that comes through, role playing and stuff like that. Some of it comes from mechanical stuff. One of the mechanical ways to have that happen is if you roll a critical failure trying to activate a psychic power.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
that's where it gets ugly, because it's like, well, I can use this, and the more you use your psychic powers, the crazier you get. So, it's one of those things. It's like, I can do this, I can see in the dark, or I can know everything about ancient Egyptian death cults for an hour, or
there's a cost and a risk.
There's a cost to it.
Yeah.
And this was a system we wanted to put together because we felt we liked the sanity mechanic from Savage Worlds, but we wanted it to tie in a little bit better with our world setting, and that's why we sat down and worked this out and thought this would be a better way to make the whole thing a little bit more visceral and specific to Thin Blue Line.
Right.
I like it a lot.
And then the officers who are mundane officers but who have had run-ins with the paranormal, who can see, who can understand, the ones that are at Corktown, they have defenses against psychic powers. They're tougher. Their minds are stronger. They're still unraveling, but they unravel at a slower rate.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's their trade-off for not being psychic, is that they're towers of will.
So less sensitive to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and there's an edge you can. Is that an edge or a flaw, or an edge or a hindrance,
Edge to
John?
start with, jaded, I believe.
No, Jay, I'm talking about detached psyche.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Is detached psyche an edge or a hindrance?
I don't remember.
Well,
I
let's
can't
leave it
remember.
as an item of suspense for those who are.
Yeah, but
by it.
detached psyche is awesome. You've had such a horrible run-in with the paranormal that your psyche becomes detached, essentially, and it's sort of like rattling around inside your body,
Wow.
rattling around inside your head, and it makes you completely immune to psychic powers.
Neat.
Sort of like a nullifier is, right? But it's one of those things like, yeah, you can't be fooled and you can't be possessed, but you can't be healed.
It is a hindrance.
And you can't be protected. Yeah, it is a hindrance.
It's a hindrance. Okay. So, out of curiosity, Accursed, if I recall correctly, it leveraged some elements from the Horror Companion, correct? And does this also leverage some components from Horror Companion, or is it its own thing altogether?
Absolutely. So one of the things we were looking at when we were putting the book together was the bestiary. We've got a lot of specific creatures that we want to put in, but the Horror Companion has a fantastic bestiary that's extremely comprehensive.
Yeah,
and
it does.
there just is not a good reason for us to reprint or recreate a lot of those creatures when they're readily available in the Horror Companion.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a few edges and a few hindrances that we also went, yeah, this from the Horror Companion, it really fits the tone we want for the setting. So we are strongly recommending that people use that as well.
And you mentioned rituals earlier. Is that also using rituals from the Horror Companion, or is it its own creation as well?
The rituals are largely an NPC thing.
Okay.
So that's not something we really delve into as much.
Right.
Okay, so that's not something players would opt into, but more something that the GM would use as a tool for the story with NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They are a plot device.
Yeah,
That's right.
I mean, I used it as a plot device. I ran a game where the players were actually firefighters in Detroit Fire Department. They were a rescue squad. They call them tactical response teams for some reason in the fire department. And they showed up to this massive, 5-alarm fire in a factory, and they've got to go in there and fight the fire and rescue. There's probably squatters and homeless people in there. And it starts out as fighting a regular fire, and then they get in the basement and they find the fire elemental and all the salamanders down there.
Nice.
Because somebody accidentally summoned them.
Wow. Very
So
cool.
like a bunch of homeless people squatting in the basement trying to keep warm, and they started a fire, and they had this ancient book, and somebody got burned to death, and the fire elemental showed up, and then the fire elemental summoned a whole bunch of salamanders, and the wheels came off.
I just call that as being resourceful. But,
Right?
I mean, you got to get creative, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been liking is the blog posts that you guys have been doing,
No, thanks.
and you've given us a lot of examples right out of those. But specifically, the posts themselves, are those out of the book, or is this like complementary to the book?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Okay. Cool. Well, that was an easier question than
There you go. Glad I could help.
The stuff that will be in the book is not necessarily, that we're putting in a blog post, is not necessarily a final draft.
Sure.
A lot of it's earlier drafts than what went into even what went into the playtest player's guide. That
Makes sense.
That back for the record, I don't think we mentioned it in pimping the Kickstarter. As soon as you back the Kickstarter, if you go to the first update, you can grab the playtest player's guide right away, so you're getting something immediately.
I wish I had read that properly, because I would have looked at that already.
Yeah, same here.
Oh, man. Oh, no.
I got my face.
Well, are there any particular posts that you've done so far that are like personal favorites?
What about you, John? Do you have a personal favorite?
Well, the one that I think I contributed the most to was the one where we talked about St. Agnes and the biker gang.
Yeah. Gosh.
I kind of dug that one, which gave me a chance to have a little more free. Jason has done almost all the work on this setting. Let's be upfront about that. I've helped him a little bit with mechanics and a little bit here and there. But that was one where I got to contribute a bit more, and that was we have a priest leading a gang of bikers, who basically he knows that the ghosts are real. He's probably a former exorcist, though the Archdiocese really can't say anything about his history.
Yeah, the Archdiocese doesn't answer any questions about Father, now I forget his name.
Martinez
or something like that.
And the gang is called God's Children, and his focus is on eliminating any paranormal threats in the city, and they hang out in St. Agnes's, which is basically an abandoned, condemned Catholic church, which, if you Google St. Agnes, Detroit, the photos of that are just amazing. And so we've got this gang of bikers that is going around fighting the paranormal, but the big problem is they acknowledge that the paranormal exists. They want people to know about it because they're under the impression that if people know about it, they'll be better able to combat it. And that's pretty much the exact opposite of Corktown's philosophy. So that makes, kind of a really nice contrast there between the two groups and makes them a real thorn in the side of all the officers. In Corktown.
So according to the mass public, you just have a bunch of crazies out there that are like spouting all this stuff. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. That's a cool dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mine are. I have two. My two are the Crash of XA908.
Oh yeah.
And the Salt People.
Yeah, the Salt People was really cool. I like that one. That was really cool. So, why a police story rather than say, private investigators or like some secret government organization or whatever,
It just appealed to me when I was coming up with the ideas for Thin Blue Line, way back in the early 2000s. I was up to my eyeballs in Law and Order reruns. It was like I think A&E was showing Law and Order 4 times a day, and I was working as a chef at the time, so I was catching Law and Order at least twice a day. And right. I love police procedurals. Like I always talk about Hill Street Blues, which is the police procedural. It's
that
one of the best
song has been in my head since the beginning of this show, by the way.
Awesome. It's one of the best shows that came out of the 80s. It's such a fantastic show.
Yeah.
And that sort of, you see the aesthetic in that precinct in Hill Street Blues. The building is falling apart. The cops are at their wits' end. That sort of like desperation in them, trying to hold the fabric of the city together. And I just love police procedurals. And I like buddy cop movies too. And I like all that kind of stuff. And combined with, I just love horror. I love modern horror. I love body horror, and I love that sort of alien Cthulhu Lovecraft horror, right? So all that came together, and I was looking to do this horror game, and I'm like, what if they were like cops? What if they were like psychic cops, and they were secret? And I needed a way to isolate them, so I made them secret. I put them in Corktown, and in the setting, other precincts in DPD believe that Corktown is where losers and washouts go. Right? None of the other DPD precincts can stand Corktown because they're all weirdos, because they're so crazy because of their powers, and they're picked out from the other precincts by talent scouts who are Corktown officers embedded in other precincts. And a talent scout will suss you out. Maybe you manifested a power at a crime scene. Maybe they just felt it on you. Maybe they could just tell by the way you acted. You got some disciplinary problems. Maybe internal affairs is on you for something. And a talent scout gets wind of that and sits you down and says, "Hey, I have an offer for you. Why don't you take this transfer, and we'll get you the help you need, or we'll get you the revenge against creatures that you need, or we'll whatever, we'll help you out." And so they're all funneled down into Corktown to fight the supernatural.
That's pretty cool.
So that's why cops. That's why police.
Yeah.
Well, and kind of dovetailing off of that, do you do anything with the police organization kind of mechanically in the game, or are they kind of more of a character in the game?
What do you mean?
So like East Texas University has mechanics that specifically incorporates university life into gameplay. You have to take tests, and you have to, that sort of thing.
Your funds are sometimes affected by,
right.
semester to semester.
Right on. Mechanically, there's a hindrance, which is vow to serve and protect.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and there's an edge, which is legal authority. So you can be a cop that way. And then a lot of that other stuff is role playing. A lot of that other stuff, I prefer to do that kind of stuff just for me personally in a role playing sense.
Sure.
Where it's like, and that'll be in the GM section where it's a lot of cops do 90% of their work is paperwork, right? You get to work before your shift, you do paperwork. You get in your car and you pull out and you do like one sweep around your area, your district, and then you pull into a parking lot somewhere and you do more paperwork.
Right.
While you're listening to the radio, and then you drive to a case. You drive to a call. You take care of that call. After that call, you do more paperwork. It's just like constantly doing that kind of work. So that's like role playing stuff. To me, right. And it's in. I'm going to talk about that in the Game Master section some more.
But it's important to keep in mind that paperwork is neither fast, furious, nor
fun. Right.
No, totally.
So
Agreed.
we don't want to include that a whole lot.
Yeah.
Things we want to look at is more of a cinematic approach. One other mechanic thing that we do mention is we mention the law and parapsychology knowledge specializations.
Right.
And those are important too. A lot of the police procedural elements that we're going to be adding in will filter into the GM advice, and also we're going to have an adventure generator in the GM section, and a lot of that's going to be based on, that'll have information on the different types of crimes, classifications, and linking all that together, how it can be connected to the paranormal.
And I'm assuming things like gear is obviously provided just default because right.
Yeah, you
lot of the gears.
You get a vest, a sidearm, a baton, a uniform,
right,
a belt.
Cool.
But all if you want like a drop gun, or you want a backup weapon, or you want something special, then you got to buy that.
All right. So
also, on the gear front, there's a lot of specialty gear specific to Corktown for combating paranormal entities.
Right. Of course.
So what if I find Thin Blue Line to be an interesting concept, and I'm a Colorado Avalanche fan, and my first inclination is I can't do anything in Detroit if I'm a Colorado Avalanche fan.
But you can. But you can, because I believe the Avs play away games against the Red Wings.
They do, which is why I mentioned this. But in all seriousness, in all seriousness, is there like a what if you wanted to run this in another city type of section, or is that more? Did you want to use the word count to just really talk Detroit?
Do you mind if I take this one, Jason?
Have at it.
All right. So one thing to keep in mind from the get-go is that this game is very much Jason's love letter to the city of Detroit.
Nice.
Awesome.
I don't understand it, but he likes the town. And the game is very deeply embedded in the city, and that's why we put a Detroit police story in the title. The first 40-ish pages of the book are a history of Detroit and a description of the neighborhoods, because the city is very much a central figure in the game. It is probably the most important NPC in the setting.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Sounds like it's a character that's really integral to the setting itself. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I like it.
While there might eventually be a spin-off someplace else, that's not the focus at this point.
Yeah, because I can imagine, like, especially in the South, there's a lot of, sort of Gothic, Southern Gothic tales, that deal with supernatural elements, and I could imagine, like here in Atlanta, for example, being able to run something just like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
my band plays Mardi Gras every couple of years.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm in New Orleans, I'm like, oh man, look at this place.
Oh yeah.
It's just like
totally
cool.
That's awesome. Well,
so is that a call out to any freelancers who live in particular cities, or?
Well, I really I love the concept. So I'm going to give you another. Suppose you just got an Apple Music subscription, and you now have access to the entire iTunes library, and you wanted to put together a soundtrack for Thin Blue Line. What would be on that soundtrack?
It's funny you should mention that. I have been curating, and I released one a couple weeks ago. I need to do the next one. I have been curating specific genre playlists on Spotify of Detroit and Michigan musicians.
Oh wow!
Nice.
I linked to the rock and roll one earlier. I'm releasing the hip hop one real soon because we got a fantastic hip hop scene here. And then I'm going to do jazz and blues, and then I'm going to do Motown.
Nice.
So a lot of Motown music would be on a Thin Blue Line soundtrack, right? A lot of techno, because Detroit kind of invented techno. So a lot of techno music would be on there. Stuff like and even stuff sort of like more mainstreamy stuff like the White Stripes stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like the Electric Six. They're a Detroit band. So it's a lot of. We have a huge and very diverse music scene here across all kinds of genres, across any kind of genre you can imagine. And, you know, it's easy to populate a whole bunch of playlists of Detroit music.
That's fantastic. Any particular film scores?
I don't know.
Fair enough.
John?
I mean, starting with your typical Halloween type horror movie soundtrack list would probably be a
Everything
safe
by
bet.
John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, the Assault on Precinct 13 soundtrack.
Nice.
Oh, interesting.
I was actually thinking the soundtrack for Judgment Night, which is
one of my
terribly
favorites.
good movie, and by terrible and good at the same time.
Right, yeah.
Terribly good movie.
I have that soundtrack and I still listen to it regularly. So
I do have to throw out one other band there, and that's Midnight Syndicate. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Halloween soundtracks. Their
Right.
stuff is well suited as well.
right. I was listening to the score for LA Confidential last night when I was writing the questions.
Oh, that's a good score.
I was also thinking about Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
you know, like the soundtrack to The Crow, the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I use that one as well in my games. Yeah.
And then you spin that out. You know, you listen to, a lot of the music that, because J.O. Barr is from Detroit,
Right.
the guy that wrote The Crow.
Right.
And, he references a lot of the Swans and Bauhaus and Joy Division and the Sisters of Mercy and bands like
Right.
that in The Crow in the comic. So any of those are good for a nighttime chase through the city.
Nice. Very nice.
Oh, that is
Excellent.
so cool. I'm a fan, guys. We gotta keep this
Awesome.
going.
Glad to hear it.
Or do you have any like future supplements and stuff in mind, or are we just not talking about that yet? Where are we at with that?
We got to get this book done first.
We're still, as of right now, we're still about $3,000 away from funding on the Kickstarter. So
Right.
we are concentrating real hard on that.
Right.
We did have 5 authors volunteer to write one-sheets for us as a stretch goal. We'd really like to hit that, though that's still a little ways off.
Yeah.
And there are 7 days as of right now, correct?
As
Right.
of noon today, there were 7 days. So
Right.
we're in crunch time. If you're on the fence and thinking about it, that would be a great time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really use your help.
Let's make this happen. I'm totally stoked for this setting. So, what happens if the Kickstarter doesn't fund? Are we just done?
We will have a long conversation about that.
Okay.
Oh, man. All right. So for all of you watching, let's make this happen.
Yeah, I don't want to have a long conversation where I don't get the setting.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I did notice that it was on. So I subscribed to the email notifications from FRP Games just to kind of see what's coming out and when. And they did mention Thin Blue Line in October, so I didn't know if that was just an accidental slip or, just sort of.
We have
preemptive.
solicited it for October. We have a print distribution partnership with Studio 2 Publishing, and we expect, if the Kickstarter funds, to get it to them so that it will hit stores in October,
Right.
which means we plan to get it to our backers before then.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Kickstarter doesn't fund, we will have to have a long
Long
talk.
conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Understood. So we'll leave it at that then. Yeah. So this is actually a really critical question that I wanted to ask. In the video, that little girl.
That's my oldest daughter.
Okay. Excellent.
That's my daughter Katerina.
That's so cute.
She hung out with us when we were filming that day, and that was about the 8th or 9th take. And there are way better takes than what you see in the video. But the guy who filmed it thought that was hilarious because she was just like, "You get a haunted city, Daddy, jeez." So yeah, that's my daughter. She's pretty rad.
That's awesome. I'm so glad I asked that question. That's fantastic.
Can I give you a follow up?
Yeah.
The bar that we filmed in at the beginning.
Yeah.
That is one of the oldest bars in the city. It's a place called Abix Bar. It's on the southwest side, and I actually ran my demo there last night. And it is the coolest place.
Awesome. It looks cool.
And it's a straight up small neighborhood bar. The guy who owns it now, Eric, he's the 6th generation of that family that's owned it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and his great granddad, I want to say, or his great uncle, built that building in 1907, and then sold the building and the bar to his great-grandfather in 1910.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's pretty cool.
So that raises an interesting question then. The locales that you have in the setting,
Uh-huh.
are they owned by? Do you use the same real names or do you alternate the names? Or
That's all real. 99%. 99% of it's real.
Except for the company's most likely to sue us.
Right. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Like Roxxon.
So a fan of the setting could literally go to Detroit and be like, I know this place.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
And
cool.
if you look through the player's guide, we're using photographs for a lot of the interior illustrations.
So you can
and
visually identify it. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. Very, very cool.
Guys, this is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it really
Thanks,
is.
man.
Thank you.
It really is.
I'm glad you're excited. I'm excited you're excited.
So there were with Accursed, you had a crossover with Shinetar, and I'm curious if you guys had considered, funding being successful and more products in the future whenever that happens. Have you considered crossovers with other Savage World settings, like maybe East Texas University or Realms of Cthulhu or anything else that exists?
East Texas University is the one that people keep asking about, and if we are funded, I will definitely approach Ed and Clint and see if they are interested in doing something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Realms of Cthulhu or either of the other Cthulhu games being a really strong fit for us to cross over with, but
Right.
What about Agents of
Rippers
Oblivion?
is another one that Agents of Oblivion could be a very strong contender. Rippers is something that I had a couple ideas for as well.
Oh, neat.
That might be a neat possibility.
Cool.
Neat.
Oh, that's even more exciting. Cool. All right. I'm just looking real quick to see if there's any other questions that we had remaining. Ron, did you have any others?
No, it's really cool because I started out kind of psyched for this, and I'm ending up like really psyched and feeling like I need to go get on Facebook and G Plus and start talking more about this. So the damn thing gets funded.
Please do.
Please.
Please do.
One thing that I don't think we have mentioned adequately is the patches and the dice are going to be a Kickstarter exclusive. And I don't think I've done an adequate job of letting people know that. So if that's something you're interested in getting, back the Kickstarter, because we won't have them afterwards.
So along those lines, as you know, Savages are very enthusiastic about the action deck and having custom action decks for their settings. Do you plan to possibly do an action deck, or is there an action deck that you've seen, or action deck, a playing cards, a deck of playing cards that you've seen that would be perfect for using with the Thin Blue line?
There are a lot of police decks out there. I'm not familiar with any brand names off the top of my head that I could recommend a specific one, but those could work. That would be my first instinct, would be to go to something that's police themed.
Okay.
Jason, do you have any strong recommendation?
I don't, honestly. Usually with cards, I just pick up what's ever near and use them. I'm not really picky. I'm sorry.
My first one at hand is usually the Accursed deck we did for Accursed, because I love to show off that artwork.
Yeah, and that's what made me think about that was the Accursed deck, which you had even variant decks for as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to do another one, but I couldn't come up with enough artwork for it yet.
Right.
When the book is finished and we've got all the art in hand, that may be a separate issue.
Okay, cool. Good to know. Good to know. So you also have some upcoming interviews and such. Another Hanging on Air, I believe, this week. So that'll be exciting. So we'll keep an eye out for that, and we'll promote that as well.
Right on.
And that's with I think that's James August Wallace. Is that correct? Yeah, and he's I Live for Crits is his blog. We've mentioned his blog a couple times. Good content, really good content on his site.
Awesome.
So I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Cool.
So how long have you been playing Savage Worlds, Jason?
What year is it?
It's 2015.
Probably, I don't know, probably since 08 or 09.
Okay.
I got into. Well, no, you know what? Honestly, I've been playing it since 1993 when Deadlands came out. Right?
Yeah, Savage Worlds is the grandchild of Deadlands. So
Right.
Absolutely.
But yeah, Savage Worlds. Really got into Savage Worlds probably in 08 or 09.
About when they did the Explorers Edition.
Yeah, and that's what my first. That's
Can't
what my
argue with the $10 rulebook, right?
exactly. And actually, my first, my first Savage setting that I did for myself was Savage Robotech.
Nice.
Neat.
I look forward to that document in my mailbox.
It's not much of a document.
I'm kidding.
We had a fantastic time at Gen Con, what was it, 3 years ago, with Jason running a Savage Robotech game here.
God, that was fun.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned Deadlands, and that actually reminded me of another question I did have. And you also talked about the rich history of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
What if I wanted to do this setting in an alternate time period? Are there is there anything that in the setting book that can accommodate that?
We started, go ahead. But when we started talking about this, I desperately wanted Jason to do it as a '70s cop story.
Oh, awesome. Or the '80s cop story, right? Where you have like the desk sergeant like yelling and.
You're off the case, McCluskey. Turn in your badge. You're a loose cannon.
You're out of line.
You're out of line.
I'm out of line.
This whole stinking city's out of line. Yes. See, that's the thing, right? Like, for Thin Blue Line, I sort of think of it as a police procedural. I think of it as sort of dark, and I hate to use the word gritty because everybody throws that word around about Detroit, but kind of a dark, street-level gritty, kind of, ugly. People die real easily, it's kind of really terrifying. But if you wanted to play this as one of those, if you want to throw your badge across the desk at the sergeant, that's a totally legit way to play Thin Blue Line.
Awesome.
If you want to play it as a like an '80s, if you want to play it as a Lethal Weapon, please do.
What about like noir? Like if I want to do like
Sledgehammer, yes.
Oh, that's awesome. That would be hilarious.
Oh my God. All right, project's over. Hell with this.
Serrano, I'm gonna need your badge and your gun for that one.
We're doing Savage Sledgehammer now.
So I was also imagining like like Deadlands Noir got some pretty good traction. So I can imagine a noir type component to it too.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, the city was so much different in the 20s that
It had money.
it had a ton of money, and it would be like a completely different setting. It would be amazing. There are neighborhoods that don't exist anymore that existed in the 20s.
Cool. So that's a Thin Blue Line companion due out in 2016.
Maybe.
Right.
Like we said, man, we got to fund this first.
Yeah. I hear you.
Awesome.
I hear you. Cool. All right. Well,
good luck in these last 7 days.
Yeah,
Thanks.
definitely.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Definitely. We're gonna we'll be sure to keep mentioning it online and
Tell your friends.
Yeah. Indeed. So we are nearing the end of the hour. Any last bits that you guys want to include before we end the show?
John?
Really, just the biggest thing is we're really excited about the setting. We really want to bring it to you. Please, from the bottom of my heart, if you are interested in seeing it out there, tell your friends who might be interested about it and consider backing us because we need your help to get this out there and get it done.
Excellent.
And I really can't add anything to that. Just please back us so we can make this awesome game.
We'll have to get back together for another hangout when it reaches its goal and pop a bottle of champagne or something.
I'm down.
That'd be fantastic.
I'm down.
We'll make that one not on air.
Right. Not hang out on air.
Right.
Oh,
Excellent.
good times. One final question. Why do you hate Shane Hensley, John?
Good night, everybody.
I'm kidding. That was it.
I didn't
joke.
know you can go through with it.
love
That's
Shane.
awesome. Yeah.
You dared me to ask the question. I know it's not an actual thing, but this is funny.
For those of you at home, we were actually joking about even just ending the broadcast right then and there. And just,
We're out of time. Good night.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you both again for coming on, and thank you again for reaching out to us to come on this hangout.
Thanks for having
It
us.
was a lot of fun. Thank
This
you.
has been a tremendous amount of fun, and I'm really excited about it. I really felt bad early on because I was like, I have so much fatigue from Kickstarter, and I backed 2 other projects. I had a couple of decks of playing cards that I was backing, and I was like, you know what? Forget those playing cards. I'm backing this. This is happening. So
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
yeah,
I feel bad for
absolutely.
the playing cards, but
No, don't. They're doing fine. They funded well in advance, so they don't need me. Cool. All right. Well, thank you again, and awesome. So we'll keep our eyes on the Kickstarter and keep pushing it out there. Cool.
fantastic.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.